Sorry, y'all. Vanillas still suck. What's up, my Yugi Bros? I'm your host, the one, the only, the RJB0. Welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! In Business Casual. Today I am talking about a thing that is crucial to the consistency of a deck, something that I call play starters. Play starters are cards that your deck requires in order to go through with its best plays. These are the cards that add cards that you need from your deck to your hand. These are cards that create advantage, which you can use to then make plays, to remove cards from your opponent's field, to make unbreakable boards, things like that. They are the sources of your plays that your deck cannot move on without. The reason I'm bringing this up now is because Konami has had an annoying habit in the last few months, and actually for a while now, of making support for archetypes, support for decks, where the only really decent play starter that the deck has is a field spell. A great example is the new vanilla support, the new normal monster support, which has a few interesting cards in it, among them the 2 traps that you can use from your hand, the one that you can use to negate an opponent's monster effect, and reduce their attack and defense by 1,000, and the one that's basically an Infernity Break that you can activate from your hand. That's pretty darn cool, but the thing is, that isn't one of its play starters. Those cards are things that are a part of the play, and they're not exactly a unique part of the play. They don't do something that in and of themselves are particularly incredible. If you had a play that built up to those, that gave you advantage, and then allowed you to use those cards, that would be really, really strong. And that's kind of where the field spell comes in, which allows you to special summon tokens when your opponent activates cards, and when you summon a normal monster, tokens included, then you get to search out the other support from your deck. That's really good. The problem is, it's only the field spell. In order for the deck to do anything halfway decent, you have to have the field spell around. Otherwise, you're just one-for-one dropping trap cards out of your hand, sometimes minusing in the case of the Effect Veiler card, and then you don't really have anything else that the deck does. And in the current format, in the meta, as it has evolved over the last, 2 years, anything that operates on a one-for-one basis during your turn is bad. It may as well be a minus by comparison to the rest of the meta. And so the new vanilla support, minus the field spell, is really awful. And I'm going to be making the argument that a field spell, in and of itself, being the main play starter, is really terrible a little later in this video, but there are a couple more examples. Another example is the True King Draco deck, which I find really interesting. I'll be doing a review on it soon, I think. And I find the mechanic of the deck really, really interesting, but the deck falls short because the only card in the deck that can really start any plays that are worth making is the field spell. You know, your monsters can summon themselves and get their floating effects, but you only at best +1 off of that, and almost always minus with it. And, you can make True King VFD, but anyway, I'll get to that in the review. The point is, the deck's good plays, the deck's pluses and its consistency come entirely from the field spell. The same comes from the new B.E.S support. The same is also true of Scraps. When they gave them Scrap Factory, they only gave them Scrap Factory. They didn't give them any more combo pieces to work with, and so the card that they needed in order to keep up with the meta was only a field spell, and you have to have the field spell in your hand in order for it to work. So there are a great number of examples of decks that rely so heavily on their field spell to work, that they don't really work. If you don't open with the field spell, the deck doesn't work. And another great example, even the most relevant example, is ABC. ABC is a deck that is extremely powerful, but really only if it has its field spell. The only reason it has become meta at all is because its monsters also have fairly decent effects, and it's got basically the best boss monster of all time. And so if it can get the field spell, it does very, very well. But the reason why it hasn't been winning nearly as often as we predicted is because it relies so heavily on the field spell. So why is it that field spells, being the center of the deck, sucks so badly? Well, this comes back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the video, which is play starters. A deck's consistency is largely couched in how good and how many its play starters are. If you look at the meta right now, you've got a few examples, a few different decks, and almost all of them have a deck that's just about at least a third play starters. You know, Metal Foes, you've got tons of Metal Foes monsters in there, and your Metal Foes monsters are your play starters. You use them in combination with other cards, you get other combo pieces, and if you have a Metal Foes card and a combo piece, you have Metal Foes combos. The same is true of Mermails, where almost half the entire deck is play starters, which means you are almost guaranteed to open with usable plays. The same is true of Frogs and Paleozoics, where they are just full of play starters because your plays are based on your trap cards and your deck is almost entirely trap cards, and then Frogs, which contribute to starting plays. And then you've got ABCs. ABCs have play starters besides the field spell, but in order for those play starters to work the way that they're supposed to, you really have to have the field spell. The Galaxy and Brilliant versions don't necessarily need to have the field spell, but the deck works best when it's got the field spell on the board. And so your play starter, your field spell, if you have 3 terraforming in the deck, is only 1 out of every 6 cards at best. So if you're going second even, you've got a fairly low chance of actually being able to start a play. So when you look at this other support, it's no wonder that these decks tend to brick really hard. The True King deck bricks incredibly. The same is true of the new vanillas, which I've tested out. The same is going to be true of the new B.E.S support, which I didn't expect to be competitive anyway. The same was true of Scraps. Scraps rarely got any decent combos, even after they got Scrap Factory, because they needed Scrap Factory so much that they only got to start a play, you know, twice every 3 or 4 games. Additionally, field spells in and of themselves are kind of the worst play starters there are because they are so easily stopped by cards that are absolutely ubiquitous in this meta, including things like Twin Twisters, Ghost Ogres, just Cosmic Cyclone. MST will stop a field spell. The amount of quick effect removal in this game basically makes field spells just about the worst play starters you could possibly have. So what are the lessons that you can learn from this video? First of all, I would be extremely skeptical every time Konami comes out with support for a new archetype or for an old archetype that is based entirely in a spell or trap card, especially if it's a field spell. And the second main lesson that you have to take from this video, or that I would take from this video, is that when you are thinking about the consistency of your deck, one of the things you really should be thinking about is how many cards in your deck, what percentage of your deck are cards that can begin plays. In a lot of ways, that's the very definition of consistency. So I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why in the comment section below. Of course, subscribe for more decks, discussion, analysis, and general Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans. Thank you all for watching. I am your host, the one, the only, the RJB0, and I got a jet. See you guys.